15th chapter. Now all of the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus, and the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the property that would belong to me." So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country. And there he squandered his property in desolate living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. And the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approaching the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has got him back, safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I've been working like a slave for you, and have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat, so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, and who has devoured his property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' Then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'" The Gospel of the Lord. Please. Dear hearers of the Word of God, grace and peace to you from God our Father, from our Lord and our living Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. This is a painting by Rembrandt from the 1600s. It's called The Prodigal Son. This next one is from the 1960s. A guy named Robert Hodgel. I have a painting of Moses in my office, painted by the same guy, more stylistic. This next one is from the 2000s. Hichi, his name, Hichi. Prodigal Son, that's the name that they all titled that. Prodigal. What's the first word you think of when you think of that word, prodigal son? Wild, disrespectful, selfish, wasteful. That's not a word that I use much. Prodigal, or prodigiously. Too many syllables for me. But this is what it means. Lavish, exceedingly generous. I did not know that's what it meant. Lavish, exceedingly generous, abundant, or recklessly wasteful. The last one is what I always go to right away. Right away, I wasted all his inheritance. All that the prodigal is the younger son because he spends the inheritance, his share of the property, in a reckless manner. He spends it all. It's gone very quickly. A fool and his money are soon parted, right? But think of it, of the other people in this parable that Jesus is speaking about. This is the third parable in the series. The first, the gospel begins at the beginning of the chapter, and then it skips to the middle. The first parable he talks about is a woman who lost 5 coins. And she searches the house until she finds it, and she rejoices and calls all her friends and says, I found the lost coin. It's here. I found it. Celebrate with me. The next parable, he goes on, then a man had 99 sheep. 100 sheep, and 99 he found, he had, and one of them was lost. And what did he do? Well, he left the 99 in the wilderness and looked for the one that was lost. And people are scratching their head going, why would anyone want to do that? Well, whatever, it's a story. And then he now tells this one. What is this story about? Think about the people who waste their precious resources, who are lavish, who are exceedingly gracious, generous, abundant, and those who are recklessly wasteful. This parable is not about a son or even 2 sons. It's not even about the waiting father, which he's in the 2. It's about a family and how they all work together. Raise your hand if you've ever been part of a family. Okay, most everyone here. Okay, yeah. We all know what this is like in certain ways. We can identify with this story, and that's why it's so enduring. That's why it has problems. That's why it has problems. Now, Kenneth Bailey is a biblical scholar, and he spent his life in the Middle East. And he says they view this parable in a very different way in the Middle East, the culture there. And how they translate it is interesting. I'll tell you more about that later. What's this story about? It's about grief and joy, about a broken heart and a mended one, the grief of a father whose son wishes him dead, an older son and a brother who is just as far away from the father as his brother is without leaving home, who thinks himself as a slave, even in his own home. And it's about a father who demonstrates his love to both sons, no matter what the cost to himself. No matter what the cost to himself. It's a surprise when Kenneth Bailey talked about this. When they told this story in the Middle East, right away they say, this doesn't happen where we're from. Because the younger son speaks first. And that culture, what's the pecking order? The older son, he's in charge. And the younger son doesn't say anything unless he's asked. And right away their ears perk up and go, what is the younger son doing, speaking to his father? What's happening? Is he injured? No, he's not injured. He wants his share of the property. And right away they say, that's totally illegitimate. The younger son cannot demand his share of the property. It's an unthinkable request, because a father only gives an inheritance at his death, and he doesn't get it. It's passed on to the oldest, and then down, and trickles down. Right away. They all say, what did his father do? Did his father yell at him and chase him out of the house? No, the father gave it to him. What? The father gave it? No, we would never do that. And they all just shake their heads. What kind of story is this? The father must beat his son. Must beat him because he wishes his father dead. He's demanding his share of the property that he's supposed to get when his father dies. But the father doesn't explode in anger. He grants him a request that was completely unimaginable, even in Jesus' time, as it is today. The younger son gets his share, 1/3 of it, and he cashes it out. He not only hurts his father, but he also hurts his brother. The family farm just lost 1/3 of its assets. Even today, think if you're in business, a family business, and now you just lost 1/3 of it. How well is that going to last? How long is that going to last? What business can lose 1/3 of its assets and survive? It's interesting distinction too, because the younger son doesn't ask for his inheritance. He says, "Give me my share of the property." He's thinking of the ATM machine, right? Give me my share of the property. I'll just cash it out. Inheritance implies something, doesn't it? Inheritance, heirlooms, think of that. It implies leadership, responsibilities. In those days, wedding feasts, banquets, funeral receptions, things like that. You invest it into the farm, into the ranch, you grow it. It's meant to last a lifetime and to life your children. But only if you keep it, not if you cash it out. The younger son doesn't want the responsibility that goes with an inheritance. He only wants the money. And this is another thing that Macanthaeus says. They hear this story and they go, what is a bag of money compared to what your father and grandfather and great-grandfather gave to you? Doesn't he have any respect for his past or the present or his future? What's wrong with this boy? What's wrong with this man? What's going on? They don't know what to do. And the other thing that they come up, what are the neighbors going to say? What do the neighbors think? That comes up later. It's as if his son has died, and so the father is still part of the community, and they all know about it. The community is going to protect them, though. The only way that boy's ever going to get back and step foot aside in that town is if he comes back 10 times richer and throws a big party for everyone and apologizes to his father. And shows him that he made it all back. But of course, that is not what happens. Indeed, the younger son loses it all. He spends it quickly. And he loses it to people that raise pigs. Now, Jesus tells this story to scribes and Pharisees that come up to him and are grumbling about the fact that he welcomes sinners. He eats with them. And he's telling them about a story about a man who was given it as inheritance. And even today, we talk about Israel. What's in the news now? What did the president just recognize in Israel? That they have claim to the Golan Heights. Land, property. It's hugely important. So to give away your property, to spend it all in a country that is not a Jewish country, to a place that raises pigs, it's the worst of the worst. Not only did you give away what was given to you by your ancestors, you gave it away to a foreign country, to foreigners. And people don't even understand what we're about. He says he ends up living among the pigs. This has happened enough times in the Old Testament times that the Talmud actually has a process to deal with a son who wastes his inheritance in a foreign country. They have a procedure. They have a ritual. They take and it's a punishment. Actually, it's a punishment. It's a shameful thing to do that with your inheritance and waste it in another country that isn't even their own country. At least you're going to spend it home so your neighbors can have something to show for it. But when you go away and waste it, it's all gone. There's nothing to show for it. So if he ever shows up back at home, they find him, they fill a big earthen jug, and they fill it with burned nuts and burned corn. Now, if you ever burned corn, the corn and nuts, that burnt smell, not roasted corn, but burnt corn. How many of you have burnt microwave popcorn in the microwave? Okay, yeah, okay. You know that lovely smell that everyone loves? One time we had a babysitter. Remember that, Cole? Yeah. He put it on like for 10 minutes. Not Cole. Cole was a little boy. But our babysitter came. And the whole house was on fire. I mean, it seemed that way. And he called his dad, who was their local funeral home director. His dad came over there and opened up all the windows. But he put the timer for 10 minutes. And it just scorched them. We came back from a movie, and Miriam and I were like, what's that smell? We couldn't figure it out. We went, oh, somebody burnt the popcorn. Okay. Well, anyway, you know how bad that smells. Well, they fill this jar with burnt corn and nuts, and it's a terrible smell. And they shout his name out loud, and they smash that jar right in front of him, of the son who does this, who wastes their inheritance. And they say, you are cut off from us. We have cut you off. You have nothing to do with us anymore. You are to us a stench, like this stinky thing. That's pretty harsh. He's now an orphan in terms of the community. You might as well stay away. Well, that's a ceremony that they did, because it happened enough that they're trying to keep him from doing it. And so, anyway, when Jesus is telling this story, people are saying, yeah, we've seen it. And then he reaches the lowest point here of this picture here. He wishes he had something to eat along with the pigs. And then he came to himself. He came to himself. Bailey notes that the Arabic translation, and when they translate it in Arabic, says the son got smart. He got smart. He got smart in the sense he is now ready to look out for himself. He has a plan. And he knew that his father had plenty of hired hands. They had food enough to spare, and he just has to wait. He has to figure out a way. How am I going to get back in there? I'll just make up. I'll say all this stuff that will all work. I'll not live in the home. I'll not join the family. I'll pay my own way. I just have to get my father to agree to it. How do I get my father to agree to this? I have to appear contrite. I have to go to him and say I'm sorry, and then he'll welcome me back. So he heads home. Ah, yes, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. It does not go as planned. He doesn't walk up to the Father, hat in hand, kneel before him, and say sorry. Well, he's still far off. The Father sees him coming. And the Father does something, again, completely unbelievable, and something that would never happen in the Middle East. He's running. He's running. He's running. Even Aristotle had this to say about that. Great men never run in public. In ancient Palestine, it was regarded as unbecoming, a loss of dignity, for a grown man to run. Especially when considering what the son did to the father should turn his back when the son comes to his house and say, I refuse to see you. Yet the father set aside all concern for appearances, and he runs. And this is where it's still such an offense in the 20th century, and that's when Bailey wrote this book, seeing the parables through peasant eyes. And that's the whole book he wrote. And he wrote this concerning being in the Middle East, in Palestine, and Egypt, in that area. In the Arabic translations of this story, they refuse to translate the word for running. They don't have him run. Because they know that in the parable, people understand that they're comparing the Father to God, okay? And they're like, we cannot have anyone think that God would do something like this and run to someone who's a sinner and welcome back. We can't have that. We can't even have that possibility. So they refuse to translate the verb for running. They don't put it in there. The Father showed up to him or came to the Son. They don't put it in there because it's still that offensive. Running in public is too humiliating to attribute to God. during Jesus' time, the same type of thing happened in the scriptures with the Psalms. Okay, so if I were to ask you, what psalm is this that begins with the words, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want"? What number is that? Anybody know? 23rd Psalm. Okay, well, it's the most popular Bible verse of all time. Okay, the scribes and the teachers in Jesus' day didn't even want that in the Bible. Because when David wrote it, back in the Old Testament, being a shepherd was noble, okay, it'd be better if you did something else, but it was a noble profession. By the time of Jesus, being a shepherd was not. No, you didn't want anybody to be a shepherd, because they lived out in the country and they did all kinds of, just to compare the Lord as a shepherd, the scribes say, that shouldn't even be in the Bible. It's too offensive. So anyway, that happens over time. Well, anyway, we're not going to translate that word for running. He doesn't just run. What does he do? He embraces him. He kisses him. And Bailey says, when I first told this parable, when I just told it to them, a couple of them started laughing. Said, no son would ever say that to a father. No father would ever run him. No father would ever kiss and hug him. We don't do that. What kind of story is this? It's ridiculous. But these actions the Father gives an emotional welcome by actions speak louder than words, right? It is suggested by other people too, other scholars too, that another reason why he's running, another reason why he's running is if the town sees this loser coming home and he's not wealthy and rich, he's all bedraggled, you offend your father, you offend the family, you offend the clan, you offend the village, you offend us. He's running to protect the son from the town. Because he dishonored the town too. Interesting. An insult to one is an insult to all. But the Father takes charge. Quickly, bring out the robe. Best one, put a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet, get the fatted calf. For this son of mine is dead and alive. Again, he is lost and is found. That would be a great ending to the parable if Jesus ended it that way, wouldn't it? Say, well, that's a nice ending. But Jesus didn't end it there, because he started out the parable saying, there was a man who had two sons. Two sons. Which son does he love? Both of them. And now as the older son was out in the field, he heard the music and dancing, I said, what's going on? What's the noise? What's the racket? Did I forget about a party that I was supposed to be at? What was going on? Well, the servant said, your brother has come, and your father's killed the fatted calf because he got it back safe and sound. Just a simple, direct. Your brother's back. If you're the older brother now, imagine being out in the field, you're working all day. How many years did it take? We don't know. It just doesn't say how many years it took him to blow through his money. That's why I like this picture here. There's the older brother. He doesn't look too happy at all, does he? Not happy. Not happy. He refuses to go to the party. He's not going to join the party. You didn't even give me a goat for my friends. I worked like a slave for you. You didn't do nothing to me. And then he finally lets it all out. But when this son of yours came back and devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him. You killed the fatted calf for him. father any more than the younger son? Even though he stayed home and worked like a slave? What does he do? What does the father do? He should be at the banquet. The father. He's in charge. He should be at the head of the table, and everyone else, you send servants out to bring your brother in. Where's my other son? Go get him. Go fetch him. Hurry up. You there. Or, you can imagine that. Send servants out to him and tell him to come or else. Or, whatever. And there again, the people in the Middle East, Father wouldn't do that. He wouldn't go out to get a brother who doesn't want to come in. He'd order him to come by someone else. And he just wouldn't go out there. He tells the son the truth. Right here. Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has come. Then the parable ends there. The parable ends there, with the father not in the banquet hall, eating and drinking with the son and all his neighbors and friends, but out on the fence with his brother. And maybe that's where that phrase comes from, on the fence. Who knows? Why does Jesus end the parable there? Why did he tell us that the older son came and the younger son apologized to him for blowing his inheritance? I don't know why. Perhaps being in a family isn't that easy. And perhaps that's why Jesus gets this. Perhaps he's trying to remind the Pharisees and the scribes that this is part of our family. Sinners that come back, they want to be part of the family. Maybe Jesus wants us to think about a time when we've been or are the father. The father. Insulted, offended, having every right to punish, but being extravagantly generous. Or maybe we're the younger son right here. Foolish, wasteful. We're not applying ourselves. My mom used to tell me that. You need to apply yourself. Taking what we didn't give for granted. Trying to scheme our way out of the mess we made. Been there, done that, right? Maybe we're the older son. We're resentful about not being treated fairly in our minds, where we hold a grudge. We don't want to be a part of it because we feel offended. Or maybe we're the first ones who hear the parable for the first time, and we scratch our heads going, now why would he say that? Why would God do that? Why would Jesus tell us the story like that? Maybe we're all. Thanks be to God. Amen. Please stand. Let us confess time together our Christian faith.